You probably remember Punxsutawney Phil on Groundhog Day said that we would be having an early spring. And spring is finally sprung. That's the title of the talk today. Spring finally sprung on Tuesday evening. That was the equinox. That was when we shift from winter into springtime. And it seemed like we were going to have an early spring. There were some warm days in there. And then suddenly it doesn't feel like spring right now. 23 degrees, I think, when I went for a walk this morning. And we had a nor'easter yesterday. And Phil, what's going on? But then again, there have been some hints of spring. Around here in the Northeast, the daffodils are up, saluting as they do to the sunshine. Hello. The grass is starting to grow in completely random patterns, little sprouts and tufts here and there, turning very bright green to remind us of the growth that is coming. And the growth continues and continues and continues, and that's what spring is about, even when it doesn't feel like spring. So I promised for the talk that I would be talking about some of the metaphors of spring. One of them is a spring chicken. And a spring chicken is just a chicken that's not a year old yet. So it's something that is brand new. So if you are feeling like a spring chicken, then that's great. And if you feel like an old chicken, then deal with it. And it doesn't necessarily feel like spring on the equinox or right after the equinox. That's the start of the season, and the feeling gets to continue along for a while until we get right into the thick of it. And I'm going to remind you about cross-quarter days, which is halfway between the solstice and the equinox, halfway between the equinox and the solstice. And those cross-quarter days are the ones that really feel like the season. And I'll remind you that the cross-quarter day in the middle of winter is Groundhog Day. That's the day that feels like winter when Punxsutawney Phil comes out and gives us the first taste, the first suggestion, the first hint of what's coming up in spring. And the cross-quarter day in the middle of the spring season is May Day, the 1st of May. And as we get to the 1st of May, it'll really feel like spring. The trees will finish budding, there will be leaves on them, the flowers will be fragrant, we'll be able to start taking a walk without having to put on a coat or a jacket. And it really starts to feel like the season that we're talking about. And all of this is evolving and growing and sprouting, blossoming. There's new growth that's coming about, and that's the idea of springtime, is that there is new growth that's going on, as we heard about in the reading, that there is a seed idea that's planted, that's nurtured, that's cultivated, that's brought along, and create something new in our experience. And that's the big metaphor for springtime, is that we get to plant a new idea in the rich, fertile, creative soil that creates everything, and let it create something for us. And one of the ideas that we're going to talk about this morning is what seeds are you going to plant? That fertile soil is going to grow whatever you plant in it, as long as it's a viable seed. It's coming up, and so what do you want to bring up? Spring is also the time of spring cleaning. So every once in a while we have an intention. We're going to do our spring cleaning, and it's going to be on this particular weekend. Dina was going through some stuff in her office yesterday, and she had to take care of some paperwork, and she just kept going and going and going, and it turned into spring cleaning. And I think there's 9 packages of stuff that are going out of the house today. And the purpose of spring cleaning, it's not just a saying. In order to plant a new seed, we have to clear out the soil. We have to make sure that the soil is prepared and ready. We have to get rid of the stuff that's not working anymore. The last class of Living Untethered was, by perhaps coincidence or no coincidence at all, was also on Tuesday evening. And the last thing that we did in the class was a releasing ceremony where we considered all of the things that were making us feel tethered. And then we had a ceremony where we got to release those. So there's the possibility of being in that process, making room, planting a new seed, cultivating that new idea, and letting that grow in our lives. Passover this year is going to be late. It's going to be actually the 22nd of April. And one of the things that happens in Passover, you probably know that there's the matzah, and the reason that they eat matzah at Passover is because when escaping Egypt, the Israelites, the Jews, didn't have time to let the bread rise, so they ate unleavened bread. And that's crispy matzah, and it's not the springy and doughy. There's another piece of that. In addition to not eating the leavened bread, there's also the idea of cleaning out all of the leaven from the home. And this is a symbolic cleaning out that's done as part of the observance of Passover. And leaven is yeast, the active ingredient, the biological ingredient that makes the gases expand inside of the inside of the dough. Leaven is also old bread. There's pieces of bread around. Those can cause new grain to leaven. A perfect example of that is sourdough starter. So if anybody has sourdough starter, you use the sourdough starter to get another loaf of sourdough going, and that is also leaven. So when we are getting ready for that new season, when we are getting ready to invite in something new, we got to clear out all of what's no longer serving us, everything that's old that's left over. Now we can do it ritually and symbolically by going through the house with a feather to sweep up the little crumbs that we find behind the couch and then burn them. Or we can go through that in our spiritual practice. What is it that's been going along that's no longer serving me that I can let go of? What is that newness that I'm inviting in? I had a really interesting experience in yesterday's mail, reminding me of the season of transformation. There were two things that showed up in yesterday's mail. One of them was a marriage license for a wedding that I did yesterday. The paperwork showed up from the county courthouse. And that's a new idea. That's something brand new that's being planted by Samantha and Kevin. And we had a wonderful ceremony where we were able to set a new intention and invite in that newness that is their life together. So that is something wonderful and new that's springing forward. And just metaphysically, it was in Westchester, PA, and there was a nor'easter that blew through in the morning. So it was very rainy, and it was very cold. And it was in a tent on a patio, so we knew that we were going to be okay. And there were heaters blowing, so it wasn't an uncomfortable place. But after that stormy, gray day, we started the ceremony, and a couple minutes in, the sun came out. As yet another reminder of that transformation that's available. To be in springtime, to be in that experience of something new. The other thing that showed up in yesterday's mail was one of the students in the Living Untethered class. As we did our releasing ceremony, the idea was to take the pieces of paper where he had written down that which is no longer serving, that we're going to let go of. And the best thing to do is to burn it. And the other thing is to run it through a shredder. And one of the students lives in a building where you can't burn anything because the smoke alarms go off. And also no shredder available. So I said, send it my way. I have a burning bowl. And we will let it go in the burning bowl in a ceremony that I will do here. And so whether you're doing it in a literal way or a figurative way or a metaphysical way, set your intention for what it is that you want to have to experience in your life. Be willing to let go of what's not working for you. Choose your seeds. And we say that metaphorically, choose your seeds. And I'm going to choose my seeds. So just as an example, here's a seed. So, okay, yep, that's a seed. And that's a viable seed. What's it going to grow? If I plant that seed, what's going to grow? Well, you might have looked at it and said, I think that's a pumpkin seed. Or you might have looked at it and said, is that a grapefruit seed? Or you might have looked at it and said, I don't know what kind of seed that is. Let's plant it and find out. Well, I got to tell you that if you wanted to grow a pumpkin and you planted that seed, you would be very surprised and perhaps disappointed when up comes a zucchini, because that's actually a zucchini seed. And, there's some ways that you can understand what the seeds are that are going to grow. One is it might show up in a package that says sunflower seeds, in which case, by golly, those are the seeds that I'm going to plant, and that's what I'm going to grow. You want a tomato, you plant a tomato. So you have to understand what it is that we're planting, what it is that we want to harvest, and set about in making that the crop that we are bringing into existence. We also need to make sure that the soil is ready. If I take this lovely zucchini seed and I throw it on the sidewalk, nothing good is going to happen. I could put it in a bird feeder, and the birds will enjoy it very briefly, but it's not going to turn into a zucchini for me. So we need to make sure that we're clearing the space, making the soil ready, intentionally planting the seed for what we want to grow, and then tending to that. The weeds come up, we can feel victimized by the weeds, and it won't help. The weeds are growing because they're there, and what they do is grow. And if you get weeds that are coming up, then instead of crying or running away or beating yourself up and saying, I'm such a lousy gardener, you say, oh, there's weeds in here. I have a little bit more work to do to clear out the weeds so that the zucchini or the sunflower or whatever it is that you've been planting has room to come up. And that creative process gets to go continuously. When the weeds come up, instead of being punishment, it is guidance of what is yours to do next. When the plant starts to come up, there might be some guidance as to how am I going to protect it from the animals? What is it that I need to do to fertilize or nurture the soil? Are there things that I have to do? There's plenty of experts. There's lots of apps that you can get. You point the camera at the plant and it tells you what's wrong with it and what you have to do in order to bring that plant back into that experience of harmony and wholeness. And it's not like not knowing that means that you're bad or less than. It's simply an opportunity to grow and expand and bring something new into being. So, go shop for some seeds. Or don't. Clean out a closet. Or don't. Let go of something that's no longer serving you. Or don't. This is an opportunity to bring in something new. And if the newness that you want to bring in is exactly what you've had so far, go for it. That is a choice as well. So whatever it is that you're going to be having in your life next, choose well. Choose in joy and harmony. Don't take something that some seed that somebody else has handed you and say, well, I got to plant this and I got to live with whatever comes up. We get to choose. We get to be intentional. We get to be open about what's coming our way, what we're going to put our energy and attention and creativity into, and let that be the blossoms that are coming up in our garden. Do that. Spring is underway. This is the time to do it, and you deserve it. You deserve all the good that's blossoming in your life and continues to do so. And so it is.